Hi, folks. Welcome to A Question of Meaning with Arthur and Katie. I'm Katie.
Yay, we haven't done that joke in a while.
Oh, yeah, well, that's hilarious. Try to
Yeah.
recover. Let's give them time to
That's right.
get off the floor, holding their
right.
sides.
Yeah, this is really a comedy show, right? Not
That's right. Life is a
philosophy
comedy
show.
show. That's what I think. The universe is a comedy show. There's the National Lampoon so eloquently put it in their brilliant radio dinner. Google that sometime. Great imitation of John Lennon after his Rolling Stone interview, and Joan Baez.
Yes.
Pull the triggers. Well, never
Wow.
mind. In the beginning, they have a song based on, what was the name of that?
Desiderata.
Desiderata. Know yourself. If you need help, call the FBI. And the recurring chorus is, you are a fluke of the universe. You have no right to be here. And whether you can hear it or not, the universe is laughing behind your back. Feeling paranoid yet? It's the first day of December.
Well, happy December to you.
Yes. Only 30 days until the seasonal, 31 days until the seasonal nonsense is over. 32.
Well, we were at Firestorm last night, had a wonderful time. And I was just, we talked about this being comedy, and when we talked about it later, Arthur, I was nervous. It's funny because I've been talking to this camera for this is like our 38th show or something, and I seem to be getting pretty comfortable talking in front of a camera, with the idea of some nebulous audience out there. But when I was confronted with actual people, it was a whole different thing. It was like, oh my God, I'm supposed to talk in front of these people? And Arthur is like a born entertainer. So
see Ham.
And he's a very funny guy. And I'm not very much of a comedian, so Arthur advised me to loosen up. So I'm going to try and loosen up a little bit.
Riders in the storm. Who sang that? You know who sang that.
I know the song.
Riders in the storm.
Don't know.
Okay, here's clue number one.
We
The time
play
to
this game
hesitate
all the
is
time.
through.
That's not going to help. I know the song.
Sure
I can hear
is.
the song.
Listen to the clue. No, the time to hesitate is through. You got it. No time to wallow in the mire.
I don't know. How is this cluing me into who sang it?
Try and we can only lose.
Your love will become a funeral pyre. Okay, the Doors.
Yeah, Jim Morrison, right. The Doors. Riders in the storm.
Okay.
The viewing audience probably got that a long time ago. We should start offering prizes and do a call-in.
Okay. Well, I was thinking when you were quoting that Desiderata line, you are a fluke of the universe. Well, maybe that's what we could talk about. I mean, are we flukes of the universe?
Some people think so. Some people think humans are completely unnatural and just wreaking havoc on nature. Like we're some sort of freaks and anomalies. And well, when you think about it, you can see how people could come up with that.
Yeah, we do seem like we're totally, like there's a disconnect between the animal world and us in a lot of ways. But then, one day I was thinking about anthropologists and, what's the work of anthropology? And a lot of what they do is they dig up trash piles of earlier humans. And I thought, that's interesting. We are we hate ourselves and we condemn modern civilization for being polluting and throwing away, Well,
some people hate ourselves. Some people hate themselves.
Tens of thousands of years ago, human beings
think
had...
they don't hate themselves, that's what I'll say.
Human beings had trash piles. They threw stuff out just, outside their village. I've heard about the Native Americans out west that lived up on mesas, threw their trash off the edge of the mesa. But, at that time, all they had was, cactus leaves and pottery, which decomposed. And so there's not much left for the anthropologist to find, just some pottery shards. Today, those same Native Americans are still throwing their trash over the mesa, but now it's plastic bags.
And all of those junked cars. You ever take a train trip through the West?
So the behavior is the same. However, what the composition of our trash has changed.
Of course, our Defense Department, all of our stuff is behind barbed wire and huge reservations with decrepit B-52s and B-47 bombers and.
Well, and then to take this, I'm trying to say to bridge the gap between modern Americans and we said there's a disconnect here, and where are humans a fluke? I mean, when we went to.
You're saying the oldest people on the planet or the earliest human remains have junk piles,
right? And
so,
then I'm going to go.
That's the whole point.
Farther. I'm going to go. I know, but I'm going to go farther. Then I'm going.
We
to
were unnatural even then. I'm just kidding.
No, I'm going to go into the animal world. If you give me a chance.
All right.
We went to Australia and New Zealand years ago to visit Arthur's daughter, who was over there in Australia. And we went to the Great Barrier Reef, of course. It had to be part of our tour. And
of course. I missed that.
And we went to this island called Heron Island, right in the middle of the Barrier Reef. And there, it's a bird preserve. I mean, it's just incredible numbers of different
numbers of
birds. But what happens is these birds, there's so many birds of this one. I can't remember what the name of it was.
Sooty terns.
Sooty terns, yeah. Well, would make nests in a particular tree, and then they would, what's the polite word? Defecate off the side of their nests, and these like long strings of defecation were hanging out off every nest and dripping onto the leaves of the trees.
This is dinner hour.
And killing their trees.
Yeah.
Okay, so the birds nested in the trees and killed the trees.
Fouling their
through
nests, as it were.
the actual fouling of their nests. So when we act like humans are the only creatures that foul their nests. Well, I saw it with my own eyes. These birds really foul. I mean, they killed the trees that they nested in. I mean, if that's not fouling your nest in a human-type way, what is?
So your point is?
My point is where there is no disconnect. We're continuing an animal behavior that, we're now seeing because of the magnitude of our trash. We are confronting the consequences of that.
So
but
if the birds could create factories and spent fuel rods from nuclear reactors, they would do so.
Yeah, I say so. Yeah.
A lot of people are confused, I think, especially fundamentalists, about the Aesop's fable called the creation story in the book of Genesis, which is really a teaching parable. Or I forget the name of the rabbi who said anyone who takes the Bible literally is a complete fool. I didn't say it, he said it. Blame the Jews. Blame the Jews.
Well, at least there's one Jew.
Yeah. What's the Borat song? Throw the Jew down the well. Let's all get all together now. Kind of vile movie that was. That guy is such an. Anyway, every to each his own, within limits.
Okay.
The Genesis, the parable of creation, including Adam and Eve, is about the moment when they ate of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That was the momentous occasion when humankind separated from the natural or the wild animal kingdom. That was the beginning. And if anybody's done it better than the ape with the bones scene in 2001, A Space Odyssey by the master Stanley Kubrick, I haven't seen it. When the ape is playing with the bone, thus spake Zarathustra, starting to swell up on the soundtrack. Mm-hmm. And he's playing, and he drops the bone, and it knocks some other bones into the air, and just dun, 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 dun. And finally it's crash. The first real invention, the perceiving in the existing environment something that's not yet manifest, envisioning it in the mind, the dawn of the analytical mind, the ability to reason and invent. And in exultation, after he kills the alpha male of the other tribe who's successfully driven them off from the water hole, just reflexively turns and breaks his neck with a blow. In exultation, he flings the bone into the sky and silently turns into a satellite orbiting the Earth.
So you say that's the exit from the garden.
That was the exit from the garden. Had nothing to do with covering the naughty bits, although conceiving those as naughty bits that needed to be covered up.
That's right.
we need we had to imagine that. That wasn't true of our real ancestors, the apoids down in Africa, who, where all this began. So it's not natural; it's an inevitable process, and that marked the separation.
Wait. You said it's not natural; it's an inevitable process. I'm not sure what you mean.
I don't know what I meant either. It was clearing my throat. It is an inevitable process.
Which means it is natural.
We were evolved for a specific purpose, and that's what our work is really about. That we are completely natural. It's almost, I like to see it at times like the earth at that moment, didn't say literally, but more or less said, okay, you're it. Here's the baton. You're charged with going for hundreds of thousands of years until you take the next step in planetary evolution, which we'll talk about in a second. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to feed you. You're going to feed off my body. I'm going to nurture you, give you everything. And then we'll reach a point toward the crunch time, toward the very end, where you either take the next step in evolution, which is your charge. That's the hot potato in your lap. Any more metaphors? Or you're going to self-extinct, because what you're going to do in your your technologically developed self that will eventually be there hundreds of thousands of years from now, you're going to wreak so much havoc on the planet that I'm not going to be able to support you anymore. It's like a kid that has to either make it or on their own, or you don't get to come back home anymore. I fed you, taken care of you, educated you. That's it. You're out of here. And that is the time we're actually in. But all this is natural because we were evolved with a mission and a purpose.
Yeah, well, I think that you pointed out how Christians have this disconnect. Believe in the disconnect between
some Christians.
But I think it goes through our culture. I think it's shot through human thinking. And there's different myths about how humans are different than the animals. But I imagine if you really did a study, you'd say pretty much in every, at least modern culture around the world, there is the belief that there is a separation. And I can point to it in the environmental movement. When Bill McKibben published the book, The End of Nature, I was deeply offended by that. And I thought, well, here's maybe one of the reasons the environmentalist movement has so much trouble, kind of leaping over into the true mainstream because of that idea that we have brought about an end to nature, because we are as natural as anything else. What do you mean what I do as a human being is not natural? Where did I come from? Did human beings and that's, I learned this with my mother, as a matter of fact. One night we were discussing, and she was, at the time, really moving out of Christianity. She was very liberal in her theology and her beliefs in so many ways. And yet, as we discussed the nature of humanity, of what it means to be human, it became clear to me that she believed in evolution. She believed humans had come up out of apes. But there was still some concept of God reaching down and touching humanity at some point in our evolution and setting us apart, giving us free will, and in making us special, and endowing us with the soul that meant, we had the eternal soul that we went to heaven or hell that animals don't have. And we kept saying, but where, when, how? Was this intervention in the natural process? And I think that people across the board have this, even though they believe in evolution, they believe it, they still don't think we're natural. They still think God intervened somehow to set us apart.
People believe Sarah Palin is fit to be president of the United States.
I'm talking about 95% of people believe this, not 40% think of Sarah Palin. You don't think so? I do.
I think there is obviously a line that's in our makeup that says we're different from wild animals, and objectively, that's certainly the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, there are chimpanzees that use pieces of straw or sticks to get ants out of the ant beds. I mean, they're using tools. That's the rudimentary inventiveness. That's analytical thought. in a very rudimentary level, but humans were imbued with this big brain and the ability to go on to create steam engines and particle accelerators, and that's where we are. So I mean, where are we going with this? Because I mean, I wanted to. I mean, I think it's a nice lead-in.
Yeah.
But
Well, I think when I said fluke, and so when you say fluke means there's no purpose, there's no meaning.
It's an accident,
right? So I think maybe is that what you were trying? You say you'd like to get to more is the meaning.
I'd like to get to the purpose,
right?
What we were evolved to do,
right?
Because that's. What did we just read? A little thing in New York Times. Roger Penrose, mathematician, has suggested that this is the consensus. The scientists think they can prove. I have to call her.
Kitty. She wants to be on TV, but she's shy.
Just lean over and clap your hands. She'll come to you.
Come here, Kitty. Come on, baby.
The consensus among cosmologists is that even though they said they can prove what happened 1/1,000,000th of a second after the Big Bang, 1,000 billionth of a second after the Big Bang, and the consensus is that before the Big Bang, there was nothing. That's one of my favorite statistics early on. Timothy Ferris and the coming of age in the Milky Way. The statistic was, and I quote, 1/4,000,000th of a second after the Big Bang, the universe was infinitely dense and zero in size. I don't know why scientists should necessarily denigrate the tooth fairy or Jesus coming back, or God as a big white man with a long beard or something who lives in the sky. I mean, that sounds about as far-fetched, what I just quoted from a scientific writer, as anything religion ever came up with. Of course, science has got a lot going for it because they can, this camera, the sophisticated camera that's filming this show, blah blah blah, the TV you're watching on, not bad. These are pretty good parlor tricks.
Yeah,
beats table tipping.
Coffee maker that brewed my coffee. Thank God for that.
And the transportation logistical system that flew that coffee in, brought it in from exploited third world countries. It's good to be an American.
No, wait a minute. I drink fair trade coffee.
Fair trade. Okay, fair deal. Where am I going with this?
So you were talking about Roger Penrose. What he
just
announced.
There's now, he thinks he's discovered background energy or waves or something.
He sees concentric circles that present at the first quadrillionth of a second after the Big Bang that he believes are evidence of magnetic impulses from
something else.
Right.
A prior. Something existed before the Big Bang.
Right.
Like most of us would say, well, duh. I mean, even when I was a kid and an atheist, I thought, I always liked the pulsating universe theory that, Big Bang, Big Crunch, Big Bang forever.
Well, that's what I thought that there was. I guess that was when the Big Bang was first proposed, people talked about that, but then that must have been dismissed because they didn't even refer to that in the article. And I had thought of that, I thought that had already been proposed as a possibility. If there's a Big Bang, it has to come from somewhere.
Well,
but see, a scientist says, if there's no evidence for it, I don't believe in it. It's not necessarily so much that a scientist doesn't think that it's possible, but if there's
nothing there, we'll just put what before Big Bang 0.
Right, because It's
right. I gotcha.
Yeah,
and it lends itself handily to atheism and it's the purposelessness of existence. You are a fluke of the. So the idea is, what Katie's saying is, I think, is that when the Big Bang occurs, 125 billion year universe cycle begins. And at some point, I mean, for us to even be alive having this conversation, what we're the result of? There are elements, heavy chemical elements that are necessary to support life that can only be created in a supernova. When Joni Mitchell said, we are stardust, she's telling the truth. Mm-hmm. The earth and everything we see, dog poop, is stardust. We are the result of a the most powerful explosion known in the universe, and that is an exploding star called a supernova. It blows up and it sows intergalactic space with these critical heavy elements, and the local gravitational fields, I don't know all this stuff, but it causes this residue of a first generation star, at least, to coalesce and collapse and ignite a new star. And that's what our sun is. It's a second generation, at least, star. I don't know about third generation. But it's at least a second generation star. And it's got all these globules of matter accretion disks revolving around it, the planets, the asteroids, the comets. And if it's in the right life support zone, not too hot, not too cold, and it's got these critical ingredients, at some point lightning strikes a tidal pool, and bam, unicellular life forms start. And from that is the whole epoch. I can never understand the problem that religious people have with evolution. I mean, we're talking about denigrating. Well, it's also elitist. It's like we're not only are we not wild, we're different, we're special. We're better than the rest of creation. Why couldn't it be matchlessly perfect too? Because what we think is the whole thing is God in disguise. The whole thing is not a willful creator. We think it's the nature of the infinite to experience limitation and to be captured in form, trapped in form for a long time, and then eventually wake up.
I think the problem is heaven and hell. I think that, what is heaven going to be populated with amoeba? That's where when you get to that
requires
kind of
believing
theology,
in heaven, doesn't it?
Well, I know, but you talked about religious people. Well, most religious people believe in some kind of afterlife. So, in order to
afterlife is different from heaven. Heaven is there you are. Right. Welcome to heaven. Hi, my name's Bob. You're approaching the heaven interchange.
Okay, well, so does Buddhists and reincarnation? Is an amoeba reincarnating as a paramecium? Does the theory of Buddhist reincarnation cover all of evolution, or does it only cover human beings? I don't know about that.
This conversation is all over the road.
But if you want to bring in, but I don't think it's all over the road, because you're asking, why do religious people, are they opposed to evolution? And to me, because if you're going to say...
Well, to make the argument, I would have to present our theory, and that is what everybody we think means by God or some infinite truth. It's a state of all-knowing, absolute power. You know everything. It's immortal. It's eternal. It's absolutely unlimited. And we thought about that, and we thought that, is there any conceivable, as much of a contradiction as it sounds like, is there any conceivable limitation to being absolutely unlimited? Yeah, the inability to experience limitation. And if the absolutely unlimited cannot have a real experience of limitation, it's limited, and that's a contradiction. Can't hold. So in order to be absolutely unlimited, the absolutely unlimited must be able to experience limitation. And we suggest there's only one way that can happen. During the experience of limitation, you got to forget who you are. You got to forget that you're absolutely unlimited. It's like rich people used to do something called slumming. You put on funky clothes and go down to the poor section of town and hang around cheap bars or go to dances with the low life, the peasants. That's not limitation. You always know if you got in trouble, you could whip out your Platinum Visa card, or you could beep your chauffeur to pull the limo up and get you out of there. A real experience of limitation would be the chauffeur lets you off on a back alley of Skid Row and gives you a red pill that makes you completely forget who you are. And when you come to, you don't know who you are. You have no ID, and you're in this desperately poor situation. Now that is an experience of limitation. And that's what we think the universe is. It's the truth that underlies everything, the amoeba, the dog poop, the sun, the lilies of the field, and every one of us is the creator. No, I hate that word. I'm sorry. I take that back. It's a new shift in thinking. I don't believe in creation. I think it's the nature of the infinite to be infinite. It's the nature of the absolutely unlimited to be absolutely unlimited. And that means to enjoy the roller coaster ride of finite survival-based form.
So this consciousness, of the one, of the true being, that's all there is. So the universe of form is really just the manifestation of this consciousness into the world of duality, the illusion of duality. So there is nothing that's not this consciousness, down to the speck of stardust that blew up out of that supernova, to the amoeba, to the paramecium, to the question of meaning cat, to us. There is no discontinuity there. It's all this underlying consciousness expressing itself as form for this illusion of limitation and this illusion of evolution of consciousness. And that, I would say, you could tell the history of the universe as the evolution of the unfolding of this consciousness from the totally because there's no absolutes in the illusion, but almost absolute unconsciousness at the moment of the Big Bang, and that the billions of years it takes to get to the point where you have life forms that start becoming conscious, the requirement for life to become conscious and increasing over, from that amoeba that has, it's maybe not conscious, it's not thinking, but it has awareness of self, and it will move away from something that threatens its survival. That's an awareness, a form of consciousness.
What we finally realized is what ego is simply self-awareness.
That's right. And up to the level of animals, which are starting to get much more self-aware, and then to human beings, who we can actually have a conversation about ourself and I, but then the levels of evolving consciousness beyond us that are
civilizations a million years older than us.
But once again, the no discontinuity for me. But then also the answer to, are we a fluke? No, this is what it's all about, is this expression of consciousness.
And even more, we have a purpose. Humankind, self-aware creatures. Question of meaning cat is not aware of her death until it happens.
Right.
Then she's very aware, probably more than we are.
Right.
Accepts it probably much more gracefully.
Mostly.
We were evolved with the purpose, as we suggested, of taking the next step in planetary evolution. And that is shedding an expendable primary survival identity. Let's talk about ego a little bit. Ego is a much maligned word that has kind of come to be a bad thing. Ego means self-centered and selfish and don't care about other people, an inflated sense of self, kind of like me.
I think somebody mentioned last night, having seen the part about me talking about my weaving, I think I show signs of self-centeredness and inflated self-opinion.
Yep.
Anyway.
In any case, we finally are pretty much convinced that's not what ego is. Ego, as Katie just said, is self-awareness. Mm-hmm. That's all it is. Robert Pirsig in Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. By the way, our book is called The Game of God, Recovering Your True Identity. Half cartoons. Real easy read. Mm-hmm. That says some pretty amazing things if we do say so. Oprah plugged it on the air, said it was a great book. Tim Allen's a big fan. Said, if you really have your shit together, he wrote in the back of his bestseller, I'm Not Really Here. People don't realize the tool man is into metaphysics mm-hmm. and quantum physics. Mm-hmm. He listed 5 books, and then he said, and if you really have your shit together, The Game of God by Arthur Hancock and Kathleen Brugger.
And it really lays out this metaphysics that we've been talking about.
You can check it out at gameofgod.com. In any case, and an expendable primary survival identity, who we most think we are, we suggest, is our personality. The way we hold ego now is ego is just a point. I'm sorry, Persig. Yeah, yes. Persig said if you have a dish, you have an amoeba in a dish of water, and you start a drip of sulfuric acid nearby, the amoeba, I think, will move away from that drip of acid, and if it could talk, it would say, "This environment has poor quality." The amoeba is self-aware. I mean, it's not self-aware in the sense that we are abstractly aware with a picture of ourselves. Anyway, I'm going to get into that. The amoeba's awareness is its ego. As rudimentary as that is, there's a sense of self that needs to be preserved. It moves away from the acid because it wants to preserve itself.
Right.
I mean, you're a biochemist. You shouldn't.
Right. Well, yeah.
So doing this rap.
No. You're quoting
and
Persig.
That goes all the way through, right up to us. Everything. And beings who are maybe have visited this planet. I'm not into Elvis sightings, but I'd be really surprised if I'd be disappointed beyond words if the universe wasn't teeming with life. And
that's a secret goal of my life, is to actually meet an extraterrestrial.
That's right, and be taken with them, right?
Yes, why not?
Extraterrestrial sex. Oh, no. Oh, it's the way my mind works.
And I was like falling in love with an ET. That's actually what it was.
Fall in love with the first ET that comes along. I might have known.
That's right. That's
Is there a psychiatrist in the house? No, I know.
Okay.
So with the whole animal kingdom, I would say it would be very much a sense of self that you are preserving. Animal flight, fight, with the exception of mating.
It would be very
familial kind of
It's
behavior.
very centered in the body.
Yes.
I am my body. I am this physicalness.
Right.
I would say that's an animal sense of self.
Right.
And babies also, are very much centered in this. This is who I am. I have to preserve this. As we develop in our childhood, that's one of the things, the scary parts of childhood. We actually theorize that this is really what the boogeyman is about, is that development of an alternate sense of self, and that comes to take you away from this kind of secure sense of self that you'd established in the physical realm. And that's this mental image of self. And that
physical self Katie's talking about is what we call the objective mind. There's more or less the eyes of the individual, be it chipmunk or us, that's a vision, a sense of self, a self-awareness. That's what the ego is. And the ego in the wild animal kingdom and babies is fed overwhelmingly, constructed by a part of the mind we call the objective mind, that's filled with critical fact data, beliefs, opinions, decisions, concepts that can be consistently verified as true by any objective analysis.
Yeah, so my objective sense of self has to do with things like I have brown hair,
right. I agree.
I have, relatively fair skin, that sort of thing.
Blue, green eyes,
sort of
grayish,
gray. My eyes change colors. You can't ever quite be sure what color they are. So So that's, our body-centered sense of self.
And that's an objective analysis that can be verified not by anybody. If your TV is at all color calibrated, you can see that.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would see my hair as blonde.
Female.
So, but then as we develop psychologically, then we develop a more subjective sense of self that is created in our minds.
The subjective mind.
And this is a completely individual mind-generated version of objective reality that oftentimes has absolutely no connection with reality. And this is the identity that most people label as ego. So I can look at myself in the mirror.
Well, no, they don't. They think ego is, once again, that swell head thing, wouldn't you say? Or just self-centered. Yeah, it would be. It was self-aggrandizing, right? You're better than other people. I'll take it back, right?
Right. So, it's like, okay, I got a pimple on my face a few days ago. This side, I can't really see it.
There it is, folks. See that? Look at that. Look at it.
That's right there. And see, I couldn't even remember what side it was on. And and it's like, oh my God, I've got to hide it. And it makes, I'm embarrassed that I have a pimple on my face. I'm almost 53. I shouldn't be having pimples. It shows there's, something wrong inside.
Hint, this is not objective fact data. This is not critical judgment.
It shows that I'm not really enlightened, because an enlightened person wouldn't have a pimple, because an enlightened person is just brimming over with health. And so this just shows how much,
okay, we got it.
Anyway.
Moving along there. It's so long-winded.
Excuse me. But so this is where, what makes, I would say really puts us separate as a human, is having this subjective.
And what the essence of that is, brown hair, green, gray eyes, female, zit. That's all objective fact. Anybody could verify that.
Right.
But all that stuff you just heard, all that story, that's not critical judgment, it's value judgment. And that's what subjective mind does. It's data that cannot be consistently verified by anyone, any objective, impartial observer. This is what Katie believes.
So we create this whole story in our minds that built on these subjective value judgments. Like I'm a better person because I weave so well, so that means I'm really, really good. I'm smarter than almost anybody I know. So that makes me better. I'm weak, and that's something that I need to be ashamed of and hide. I'm shy, so I'll kind of hide behind Arthur in public situations and let him be the kind of the clown to entertain people that can kind of hide the fact that I'm afraid to open my mouth. I mean, all of this is just generated story, and this is what that expendable primary survival identity that Arthur's talking about is built out of this whole story that I've created to explain who I am in my life.
And the reason, and this is nothing bad or wrong with this, I mean, the reason we desperately need to, like Katie wrote in our book, we hope to publish eventually here, called We Are All Innocent by Reason of Insanity, is that having brown hair and blue eyes isn't enough to identify yourself. A lot of people have brown hair and blue eyes. Now, blue hair and brown eyes, that would be different.
Yeah, but
you could even do that. It's not good enough. So and the whole reason for this desperate need to really identify ourselves and have this personality is because the bottom line truth is we don't have a freaking idea who we are. Now that's scary.
Yeah.
The basis of all fear is the unknown, and we don't know who we are, or what we are, or where we are, or why we are, or when we are, or what we're doing, or where we came from, or where we're going. And so in this huge, mysterious universe, I mean, we're born, we're a baby, the data just starts flooding in. And we at first we're just connected with everything. The ceiling is as interesting as whatever. There's little of that value judgment going on. And very soon you start defining yourself. You are forced to join the crowd. You discover that you're a separate entity, and you're trying to put together how to move through space time and navigate the furniture and not bust your head open on the tile floor. That's all objective critical judgment, being put together there. But concurrently, very soon, you're a good boy. You're a bad girl. When you do this, you will be rewarded. When you do this, you'll be punished. That like the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. They'd always been naked, Adam and Eve. So what? They were hanging out with God Almighty. They had everything. So in what's hilariously supposed to be the first act of free will, God tells him just one thing you're not allowed to do, and they immediately do it. Duh. I mean, maybe that's the greatest duh in the history of humankind, if that ridiculous story was really true, which it isn't, of course.
And plus, what it makes God doesn't realize. God creates creatures that would want to do this and then is surprised and angry when they go ahead and do it.
Adam, Eve, where are you?
Makes God look like a total doofus.
It's like Stanley Kubrick, again, that ridiculous scene in The Shining where the chef has The Shining all the way in Miami, gets on a plane, flies to Denver, rents a snowcat, goes through the blizzard, gets into the house with us, driving him to do this because of his extrasensory powers, and then comes in like, Sapphire, home, anybody home?
It really ruined the movie.
I never forgave Kubert for that.
Okay,
so anyway, but so what?
Okay, so this is what somebody last night at Firestorm, I really liked it. He talked about how we were talking about insanity, and he brought up the Bible, and at first I went, oh no. But, he said something interesting. He said that the way the Bible, because I said, really, the Bible talks about us being insane? And he said something like, and I can't quote the passage, but that it's all vanity.
That's Ecclesiastes.
And it makes me
vanity.
And it made me think of during the medieval era, the church identified 7 deadly sins, and pride was the worst of these. And for me, the way I thought of it was that this is the way the subjective mind is, the vanity of trying to differentiate myself. And the problem is that not only do we need to differentiate ourselves, we have to elevate ourselves and to be number one. We feel like in order to really set ourselves apart, we have to be number one in our minds. And so we're constantly cutting other people down and justifying ourselves in order to rationalize. There's
a reason for that, too.
Yeah, and so I mean, all I want to say, because there's a lot I could say about that, but is that what we're talking about here is not ending our differentiation of ourselves. We're continuing. We said we want to. Ego goes on until the highest evolution of consciousness, that sense of self. What we're talking about here is the elevating of self, the prideful nature of it, so that I may have curly hair, but that doesn't make me better. I'm not better than you because I have curly hair. Where in my pitiful search for feeling good about myself, I did say I was better than you because I had curly hair. So what we drop is the sense of competition about who I am.
Well, let's talk about that real quick, because I think at this point we got to say this.
Okay.
There's a reason that we do this. There's a reason we fight to stay the same. We defend our self-opinion. And we got to talk about survival real quick. We define survival as the effort of a specific form to maintain its existent structural integrity. Any form in the universe is trying to stay unchanged through time. The reason is, once you change, you're dead. As to what you just were, that's gone. It'll never be back. In the physical universe, very quickly, obviously, we're in a totally dynamic universe. Everything changes constantly. The survival effort, therefore, is futile in the physical realm, even though we try. Well, the Indigo Girls say, stretching our youth as we must until we are ashes and dust. And that happens across every 2 measurable units of time. We're not that person. So the survival effort is futile in the physical realm, but in the intellectual realm, in the realm of the mind, you decide you're ugly or you're a loser when you're still in diapers, and unless that belief is effectively challenged to the point of revealing it as a total lie, like the Toto pulling the curtain back in The Wizard of Oz. Until that happens, that belief can maintain structural integrity for a lifetime. It can go unchanged because the mind, a belief, what we call a surviving non-physical thought form, is not subject to the interactional forces of change. It doesn't really exist in the physical universe. It's a concept. I mean, it requires a believer. That can't exist in a vacuum. You got to have a host believer to have this parasitic belief exist. And the thing about it is that the nature of these beliefs is that they must convince the host believer that they're the truth. Otherwise, the host believer would say, like, I can handle drinking. I used to believe that. You know what? I can't. I'm not a falling down drunk, but I like to get basically loaded every night. That's the truth. And then I finally realized this stuff, I just got tired of quitting, and I've quit a number of times, and it's like, it's such a bother. And I can't handle it. That's the truth. So But until I face that belief, you are a liar. You are a liar. I can't handle alcohol. No chance. That belief holds sway and runs the host organism. The beliefs don't even want you to know that they exist. You know, a rat survives best. A parasite, the optimum survival for a parasite is not even let the host know it exists. The rats in the attic can gnaw the house down quietly. Because if you really hear them and you really see the damage they're doing, you'll call the damn exterminator and do something about it. So the reason that we're so fiercely, need to be right, it's not even us. It's the beliefs that are running us. I need to be right because I don't want to change. Because if I change, I'll die. Mm-hmm. That's the way the beliefs feel. Mm-hmm. They don't really exist. It's like being haunted by ghosts. But they have total control over the believer. You can be a Nazi standing there holding the door to the gas chamber open and shoveling women and children inside.
And think you're a really nice family guy that loves his family.
Doing a great service.
Yeah, and really helping humanity. That's right.
Yeah. Beliefs are not little benign things. Beliefs are what are pushing the human race toward the verge of self-extinction.
So we're not talking about, and that's what
we need to get
really
to the point, though.
I know, which is point. I guess the point is that we're not losing our sense of self. We're just.
No, I meant to the point of dropping the primary survival identity.
That's what I'm talking about.
Go with that.
Well, because see, this is where our thinking has changed. Is that we're not losing a sense of self. We're losing what that sense of self was identified with, and the primary survival identity that. Who we most think we are has been this, we call it my story. The things like that I'm a weak person, so that was a foundational belief in my life. So I have to play life weak. And so can I eliminate that as something I identify with and still have a sense of myself that it has no relation to that?
And the answer is?
Well, yes, I have.
See, any other life form, in the wild animal kingdom, we're animals, but we're not wild. Just have hydrogen bombs. Anyway, any wild animal that drops its primary survival identity, a squirrel that stops acting like a squirrel, is going to die. It's not going to make it. It's got to be true to its nature, to what it most considers itself to be, which is a squirrel. But a human being who drops its primary survival identity, which is a hugely inflated, subjective mind filled with a lot of specious opinions, superstitions, value judgments, gets that out of the way, not only will that human being survive, it will thrive. In fact, that state is called enlightenment, because that's what it is. What you will have is like the foot-thick cataracts of subjective nonsense removed, and you'll still like your favorite flavor of ice cream, but it won't mean a damn thing. You'll still prefer modern art to the romantic period. Doesn't mean a thing. It's just your individual taste. No problem. Still be interesting. You'll still be unique. But you'll be empowered by the objective mind, this incredible, the unused portion of our mind. It's just sitting there dormant because at the portals, the eyes, the ego has been obscured by a bunch of subjective crap for all of recorded human history. Still acting the same way we did in ancient Greece, basically. We're still slaughtering each other. The objective mind will put an end to that very quickly. This world will come together. We'll, speak one language until we achieve telepathic communication, which is easy. We'll probably beat physical death in 300-400 years. Let the good times roll. It's the next step in evolution. And that's literally what we were put here to do. No other animal can do it. Flipper can't do it, as smart as Flipper is. I like Flipper very much.
So when you went, going back to what you said about when that human first picked up that bone, the earth metaphorically saying, take and go, because that's what
Ball's in
you're
your court.
talking about, which is, coming to this point of realization. And, I've wondered how much of the energy of my life is sucked by things like justifying my behavior, rationalizing why I did something and why it was really okay that I did this, or why it was okay that I didn't do that, and should I do this, and how much how much of the reason we're so tired at the end of the day is because we've worn ourselves out mentally, just with this all this talk, trying hold the whole thing together. And I think that's when you talk about lighting the world up. I think, imagine if we could all be release that energy that is just being sucked from us into much more creative and productive endeavors of really serving each other. I mean, it's mind-boggling what maybe we could it's just available without us having to evolve any more in terms of physical capabilities. It's just all that mental. I keep wanting to use mental masturbation. That's what you've called it.
Sure, it feels good, but at least you're kind of feeling hollow inside. To quote Frank Drebin. Hey, way to go, Leslie.
Leslie, yeah. We watched
It's our first date. We went to see, he was in that, of course.
Yeah, Airplane.
We went to see Airplane. I thought Katie would never see me again because I was almost under the seat. I was laughing so much.
Well, I almost didn't show up. We almost missed the movie because I was so late. I wasn't sure whether this was something I really wanted to do.
This was something she wanted to really do. Me.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it wasn't not the movie, but whether it was a good idea dating this guy.
It was such a good idea.
It was
You'd have wound up in a laboratory. You'd have been a big shot.
Yeah,
well, made a lot of money.
I remember about that was not the movie. I don't really remember the movie at all. I remember we went to a cafe. This was in San Francisco, a sidewalk cafe afterwards, and talked.
San Francisco.
And we talked, and that it was that conversation that made me glad I'd shown up for the date. Definitely.
Yeah, I'm a redneck from North Florida, and there by the grace of my mother, I can't even imagine. I probably wound up a bank robber or something. But yeah, I think I've done pretty good for somebody who attended 2 semesters at an all-black college, first white student in their 100-year history in 1964, 65.
Well, I went to Northwestern, and one of the things I learned there, I was studying biochemistry and molecular biology, and almost everyone I was friends with were scientists of some nature. And one of the things I learned was that school smarts is not the same as true intelligence, that there are people that got really good grades and are now, doctors. And it's kind of scary thinking of those people because I saw what they were really like. I wouldn't want them to be my doctor. Hopefully, most of them went into things like research, but but there was a level of intelligence that I saw in Arthur that those people didn't have because they didn't really think for themselves. They were really good at parroting back the information that they were given. But to think for yourself, now that is a skill and a gift.
And we all stand on the shoulders of giants. And yeah, I'm a natural, I guess. I'm a natural-born killer of beliefs that are specious. I was fortunate enough to read the right books when I was 16 years old and discovered that, man, conformity is not where it's at. And when I was 28 years old, I was given LSD. I requested it, and it absolutely realized many years later, only recently did I realize that it was in fact, what happened in those magical few hours. This is not an endorsement. It's heavy duty. You got to be ready or not ready, whatever. Was that I didn't know a thing about life. I thought I did. That what I see now is that I entered my objective mind. My subjective cataracts were put on the floor. It was like an instant kind of enlightenment that carries a heavy price tag with it, a blessing and a curse. because I could do that. I could do that drug and be in paradise for a few hours, and then I'd turn back into a schmuck. So, a real schmuck. So,
well, join us at the North Asheville Library.
Yes.
And we'll share being
Line this
schmucks
up.
together.
Yeah, well, schmucks. Hello, my name's Arthur, and I'm a complete schmuck. Hi, Arthur.
That's what we're really about here. And
I'm not a schmuck. I'm crazy.
That's right.
Schmuck is a value judgment. Insane takes all,
The sting,
Mark Twain,
right.
this is probably going to be on the first page of our book.
Right.
When we recognize that we are all mad, the mysteries disappear and life stands explained. Mark Twain. Insanity we define as the state of confusing mind-generated reality with actual reality. And you know what actual reality is? It's the absolute truth. Nobody knows what that is. Nobody has a clue what that is. But theoretically, I hope it exists, because otherwise we don't have a prayer. Might as well off ourselves now.
And you could say, I said that the evolution of the universe is, you could look at it through the evolution of consciousness. Well, you could also look at it as the driving, the effort to answer the question, what is reality? That this, because that's the ultimate state of survival, would be in the point where you know actual reality. So that's the driving force behind all evolution, is
Trying to
this
wake up.
attempt to find out what is really real.
That's what this show's all about.
Oh,
Tune in
wow.
next time, 7 o'clock on Thursdays. And we have a rerun on Saturday at 10 p.m., I think.
sometime, yeah.
10 a.m. also Saturday.
Thanks for watching.
So long.